you do? My life was great till you added colors. Like the moon needs the sun, we don't care about the others. You set my world on fire.
Hello everyone. Blanca wanted me to come on and just kind of give you guys my take on everything I've gone through, just dealing with the loss of our twin boys. As you know, you've been following our channel. We were pregnant and expecting 2 twin boys in October. It was a MoMo pregnancy, which basically means 1 sac, 1 placenta. And it's a very high-risk pregnancy, as many of you have already heard. We lost our boys because the umbilical cords got entangled. We lost them back in May. So we've talked a little bit about how that experience was for us. We came on and we shared, our feelings and emotions about dealing with the loss as it happened. So I just kind of want to talk a little bit today about, what it's been like since. My experience obviously is going to be different than Blanca's experience. She's been recovering from her surgery. She had a hysterotomy, which is basically like a C-section. And for about a week or 2 weeks, she's been kind of unable to do a whole lot. She's up and moving around a lot better now. But for me, that put a lot of the responsibilities on me to just kind of make sure we, kept the house clean. There's the day-to-day chores, taking care of her and taking care of my baby. So I found that because it's been my responsibility to handle the day-to-day chores and taking care of everything, that I've been kept fairly busy. And I think part of that means I haven't really had a lot of time to really sit and kind of deal with the grief. I think I've just kind of put it on the side for right now, because my main focus has really been on my wife and how she's doing. I'm really been more concerned about making sure that she's okay, that she's taken care of, not just physically but mentally, because obviously there's risks of postpartum depression and other concerning factors that for me were the more pressing issue. And then at the same time making sure that Annabella's needs were always met and that she was kept happy, and that none of our grief and sadness necessarily spilled over into her, and that for her none of this would really be even noticeable, that her parents would still be there laughing, smiling, and playing with her as much as we can. So I find that for me, I've used that as sort of my escape, I guess, from dealing with the loss of the boys. There's not been a lot of actual focusing on that day to day for me. As you'll find out in later videos, we recently went and picked them up from the funeral home where they were cremated. So there's days like those that kind of bring the emotions back. I find that for me the main emotion that I feel is more anger and frustration. I get very short with patience, and I think that I'm a very patient individual in general. I think it just comes with the territory with my line of work. As a teacher, dealing with a lot of kids who can be very trying at times, patience has always been something that I pride myself on and feel like I'm definitely a person with a good deal of patience. But I found that recently that hasn't always been the case, that little things that I might more or less sort of just, shrug off would be something that might upset me or might get to me. If I had to equate it with a feeling that you would be familiar with, I would say it's just a lot like how you feel when you haven't had a lot of sleep. You just find that the little things get to you a lot easier. Driving on the freeway and having somebody pass you who, and not letting you get over and change lanes, or just, the simple things that you deal with on a day-to-day basis that normally I would think nothing of. I find myself being a lot more frustrated by. And although I don't react to it or act on that because I'm aware of it and I notice it, I definitely can feel it, like I know it's there. And I have to remind myself that that's a normal reaction, that obviously I'm just not the patient person I normally would be right now. And I just remind myself that that's okay, and I just accept that feeling, and I just kind of try to move on. And I think the awareness of it is helpful. I find that for me, the feelings of sadness, when they start to creep on, is when I just try to find something to do, something to distract my mind, to keep myself busy. Let's go do the laundry now, or let's go make sure the dishes are done. And I think although there's definitely times where I'm unmotivated and I don't want to get up and I don't want to do those things, it's that feeling of lack of motivation when I start to feel that creep in that makes me want to go ahead and just fight through that. Let's get up and let's do it. Like, you're feeling this way and you need to just do the opposite of how you're feeling. Like, just get up and just start working on something, getting something done. Go find your daughter and play with her. You know, do something. And that usually tends to work for me. I do find that as long as I keep myself busy, that it allows me to just kind of stay out of the sadness. And I feel like if I were to let things pile up, household chores, things like that, that would be a factor or trigger towards me getting more, I guess, sad or feelings of depression, because then now you've got this feeling of overwhelmness or feeling of you start to feel overwhelmed that there's too much to do, not enough to get done. So I've completed some small projects around the house that we needed to do for like our HOA, things like that. Got stuff that I had to get from work. I had to go and clean out my classroom, more or less. A lot of my coworkers helped me by moving things to a central location, but because everything happened so suddenly, I didn't get to finish out the rest of the school year. So I had to go back a week later and grab some things and then go back again with my father-in-law in his truck to get some of the bigger items that I had left there. And just the feeling of accomplishing things and getting things done, knowing that those things are getting checked off my to-do list, is a good feeling. You know, I think in general you would feel good about that, but for me that just helps me feel like I'm not allowing my grief or sadness to sort of take over. Because if I were to ignore these things or put them off or not get laundry done, or even this, you know, I know it seems silly, but those little things around the house, letting it get piled up with clutter or dishes, that stuff would really start to weigh down on me. And I think that's when I would sort of maybe sink into a more of a depressed state. But I haven't really allowed that to happen. I think awareness of what I'm going through and the feelings that I'm dealing with, and identifying that and then attacking it in a sense by finding some way to counter it, has been working really well for me. And just knowing that my focus hasn't been on the loss, and I feel like that could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. I'm sure there are some people who say you need to face your grief and deal with it, and I'm sure those moments will come and it may just hit me at some point. But I'm a big prioritizer in that I tend to focus on what really needs to be dealt with first. And for me, number one was Blanca, because she obviously was going through a lot, both physically with recovering from her surgery, but with the risk of her getting postpartum depression and the loss that and the grief she was having for just general grieving for the boys and that sadness. So I wanted to make sure that I focused on her first and made sure that she was okay before worrying about, you know, my feelings, because I felt like she had a lot more risk of really falling into a depression than I did. And her not being able to really get up and move around the house for like the first few weeks, you're just kind of lying in bed with your thoughts. Being not able to play with her daughter, which is the one thing that really cheers us both up, is just seeing her and playing with her and being able to chase her around the house and just watch her laugh. Just talking about it right now makes me very happy. She doesn't get to do those things because physically our daughter's pretty rough with her, if you haven't noticed any of the videos. And Blanca's still very sensitive and very sore around her midsection, so she has to keep a distance. She can't really pick her up yet, so she can't do those things. I just feel like when you're sitting with your thoughts a lot and you don't get to play with your daughter and you're kind of more just passive and not really able to do a whole lot, that could lead one to depression a lot easier than me, who can get up and get around and do things around the house and has the freedom to come and go if I choose, although obviously I stay with her always. That was my number one focus, was to make sure that she had me there. That I did what I could to make sure she wasn't just kind of able to sit there and feel sad and keep her mind occupied. If I couldn't keep her up and moving around and doing things, I wanted to make sure that she was busy interacting with me, keeping Annabella around so she can at least watch her playing, at least watch her having fun with Daddy, and that helps her helps Blanca be happy. I also was, done with my school year, so I don't have any of the stress of worrying about work necessarily. I mean, I got my next year coming up, which, you know, I know is when that time comes, it's going to be a challenge because I'm going to be moving into a new school with a new position at a new level that I've never taught at. So all that stuff's going to be challenging, but I do know I'm going to be surrounded by great coworkers and a great administration. So I have people that I can certainly lean on. I got great department chairs and strategists. So I just feel like I'm not going to worry about that now. I'm going to try to enjoy my time with my wife because, you know, this is probably the first time since we've been together that we've spent this much time together without having work or other things coming up, where we've been home, just the three of us with Annabella, but being able to be together as a family for this length of time. You know, we've had maybe a week, you know, 2 weeks when we would go out of town on vacation to like our trip in Mexico, things like that. But this has definitely been the longest period of time that we actually got to spend together. So it's been nice to be able to do that. And I think it will be something that we can look back to, although with sadness, it can be something we can look back to fondly to know that we had this time together, which is why it's important for me to be there for her. And since I don't have to worry about work right now and I can wait to cross that bridge when I come to it, I just choose to focus on each day, you know, day by day, what I can actually control, the areas of things that I actually can, you know, influence. So I don't have stress, and Blanca's been dealing with a lot more stress and anxiety than I have, which is another reason why I'm always trying to help her with the things that she went through with her work. If you watched her previous video, I don't think in the whole time that we've been at home with our grief, I saw her more upset than during those 3 days when she was just very anxious and upset about what was going to happen with her work, how her work felt about her not being there. You know, obviously Blanca wanted to be at work. We wanted to have a pregnancy that would be safe and one that we can, you know, she could still work just like Annabella's. You know, that's what we of course would have wanted, but it didn't work out that way. And so she needed her time to recover both physically and mentally, and took her away from her job, and that's a stressful thing, especially when the work is put in a difficult position. And so having to make sure that she understands that everything's going to be okay, it's always going to work out, everything's going to turn out fine, and it looks like that's definitely going to be the case with her job. But she needs somebody there to kind of talk her through that and make sure that she understands it and doesn't let herself feel overwhelmed and you know, just that feeling of you can't do anything. You know, that helpless feeling about not being able to control certain situations. But knowing that I'm dealing with it for her was really helpful, I think, and it allowed her to be able to, although the anxiety and the stress doesn't completely go away, it makes it a lot more manageable when she knows that I'm being proactive and trying to help her understand the situation, but also reminding her that, you know, your work does care about you and it's going to be okay. So I think that was important for me and important for her to be able to work through that together. And just another example of where I'm at as far as how I'm dealing with everything. Dealing with the loss of these boys, dealing with, well, it's impossible for me to say or diagnose Blanca if she has postpartum depressions or symptoms of that. It's always been something that I wanted to make sure I was there for her in case she was starting to feel that way, so that we could deal with it. And we were working through it together. But from what I can see with Blanca, she's handled it amazingly. I mean, I don't think you can handle it any better. I think coming on here onto YouTube does help with her to be able to sort of talk about her experiences, and it just was sort of a cathartic way to get things off of her mind and just kind of speak out and let her feelings out and her emotions out and not keep them bottled in. Well, I guess for me, I'm more of the keeping it bottled in type. But always consciously aware of my feelings and how I feel and dealing with those things as they come up, and not necessarily acting impulsively or subconsciously as a result of feelings that are inside me that I don't know why I'm doing the things I'm doing. Although there are definitely moments where I know I've let my patience wear thin pretty quickly, but always in the back of my head knowing exactly why I feel the way I do and being able to hopefully use that awareness to help me kind of control it a little bit better. So I think that for me is the important coping mechanism, is awareness of the loss, awareness of my feelings, awareness of my grief, and seeing how that's affected me physically such as loss of appetite, difficulty sleeping, and then of course, loss of patience. Those things are definitely the sort of physical manifestations of what I'm dealing with. I do find that there are days where I could probably go without eating at all if it wasn't for Blanca or her family or somebody reminding me or saying, hey, let's go get food. Not that I ever have trouble eating. I've always enjoyed eating. It's not like I have a problem with it. So once I sit down to eat, I eat great. It's just I never have a real strong sensation of hunger. Oh, let's go eat. Oh, aren't you starving? It's just like I could just, as long as I'm keeping myself busy, I could just completely forget about that, which is not normal for me. I love eating. And sleep, I feel like in general, I feel like I'm getting enough sleep. Like I don't think I'm losing a lot of hours necessarily. But there is this constant feeling of tired that just kind of looms over me. But I don't know if it's a lack of sleep or what. I think it might, again, be one of those physical manifestations of how my body is dealing with the grief. Because in general, as a father of a toddler who does tend to wake up for bottles every night, at least once or twice, and me being the one that would have to get up and comfort her if she's crying, or get her the bottle if she needs it, or lay her back down if she's getting up and trying to get out of bed. That was basically my role while Blanca's been recovering. So maybe because we're not teaming up on this, it's resulted in, a lot more broken sleep. But when I look back to just this past year and dealing with Annabella as a 1-year-old and work and all that stuff, I don't feel like I have a lot less sleep than I used to have, but I do feel like I feel more tired than I would have. So I think that's another physical manifestation of my grief. Loss of appetite, although when the food's in front of me, I don't have any trouble eating it. I don't know if it's a loss of sleep, if it's harder for me to go to sleep, if I'm up later, I'm not really paying attention to the clock. I do tend to fall asleep an hour or so after Blanca does. It isn't too uncommon, but maybe it's just the constantly keeping myself busy and involved in other things that I wear myself out a little bit more than I normally would have. Being the one that is taking on the main role of housekeeper, caretaker for Annabella and Blanca, any chores, running to the store, things like that need to get done. Those were always my responsibilities too. So maybe I just wear myself out a little bit more now than I expect. So I don't think emotionally I've dealt with it yet. There's not been a lot of tears since the initial day of the when Blanca called me at work and told me about what's going on, and driving to meet her at the doctor and seeing the boys for the first time on the ultrasound dead, and sitting in the waiting room for the doctor to come in and just give us the official, yes, it's official, you've lost your boys, to being in the operating room with Blanca during her hysterotomy and having the doctor walk around with the boys in the tray, showing us the tied umbilical cords, to holding them a few minutes after Blanca's surgery in the hospital room. Those days definitely were a lot more tears for me. But since getting Blanca out of the hospital, getting home and just focusing on her, focusing on Annabella, fortunately we've had a lot of help with family. My family was here when we first got home from the hospital, so I got to just kind of be there with Blanca and stay by her side. And then her mom took a week off, as we've talked about in other videos, and her being here that first week is probably the only reason why anybody ate, because she constantly made food and we had plenty of it, and she made sure we ate. And even if we weren't hungry, we would do it, just because we appreciated her doing that for us. My sister was here not that long ago. My parents will be here again tomorrow, so having people around has been good. I do kind of miss being able to just go out and hang out and see our friends, but it's been difficult to do that. It's something I've been wanting to do, but Blanca certainly isn't really ready for that. She did have a friend over the other day, which was great to see her interacting and knowing that it's okay to go out and see our friends again. But I can't leave her home alone with the baby, because she's just not 100% yet. And Annabella, if she fights or kicks, and she loves to kick, you're picking her up and she doesn't want you to, she could definitely hurt Blanca, and she can be a real handful. So I do miss that, and I look forward to when Blanca's healthy enough and she's up for it and she can come with me, because I would love for her to get out of the house, although we've done it, just the three of us, a few times. Got to go up to the mountains, running out and just kind of doing things to keep us busy so we're not super cooped up in this house. Making sure Annabella's getting out, because she's, for a 1-year-old, gets stir crazy in this house too. We try to make sure that she gets to go over to daycare and play with her friends at least once a week. I guess for me, it's still going to be a little while before I fully am prepared to accept. I don't know if accept's the right word. I'm just not quite sure that I've dealt with the grief component yet. If they talk about the different stages of grief, I feel like for me, there was obviously the initial shock of sadness and then anger. Because just the other day we brought the boys home and I think that was how I felt. I was just mad. And not like angry at the world mad, but just easily irritated. Like I said, I have that lack of patience and it tends to come up more when I'm dealing with the grief, I think, more than anything. So I think it just takes time and everybody handles it differently and in their own way. I think as long as I'm at least aware of my physical and emotional ways of showing my grief and I can recognize it, that's helpful, and understand that it's not something that I can ignore, but that it's something that I'll eventually find that time in my own way, in my own privacy, in my own moment to deal with it. And I think for me that's kind of how I'll end up doing it, is when I have that moment to myself. Because I do know when we were dealing with a lot of the issues with Aidan, when we found out about his hand or his heart, the times that I would really feel it mostly were when I was alone driving. So I just feel like that's just how I handle things. When I'm around my family, I don't want to show that. Not that I'm embarrassed or shy or trying to be manly in any way, but I want to be stronger for Blanca, because I want her to know that it's okay, and I want to be her shoulder to cry on and not vice versa. And I don't want Annabella to be exposed to any of this sadness. I mean, I want her to see her parents happy and loving like she's always seen it. And I want her to always be happy and loving like she always is. So I think that's kind of sums up my experience and all. In short, I guess I feel like I'm just waiting to deal with it directly. In the meantime, I'll just keep focusing on Blanca and Annabella and, the things I need to get done around the house and making sure that everything is taken care of as best I can. And then when things settle down and we're kind of back to a more normal routine, when I have that moment alone to myself, I'm sure that's when I'll get more of an opportunity to kind of just let it out, So that way I don't feel the anger and it doesn't creep up on me in the times where I least expect it. I certainly don't want to go to my job dealing with, my students and then find myself short of patience. So before I get into that situation, I want to make sure that I've got that peace of mind and I'm ready to be able to handle the difficult, the frustrating moments without allowing myself to be overwhelmed with any sort of irritation or anger. I hope any of this was helpful if you're a father or a husband dealing with loss, dealing with, your wife's loss and support, and just trying to be the one who, is the foundation, the one that can make sure everything stays held together. So maybe you see this video and you might be able to relate or hear some of the things that I've said and feel like that might be an effective technique for you as well. Because I do think if I were to give advice, it would be awareness of just knowing your emotions, why you feel the way you do, knowing obviously the root of it, and when your sadness, your grief, your irritation, those feelings start to overwhelm you and tend to feel like it could just get ready to consume you, then that's when you stand up, shake it off, and you find something to occupy your mind. You don't allow those things that you worry about getting out of control to do that. So things don't spiral. Just stay on top of it. Thank you. I hope this was helpful for anyone out there. And I appreciate you guys watching. If you found this video useful or enlightening in any way, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you have any other questions, comments, you're always welcome to put those down below. Blanca will be happy to relay any of the any of them to me, since I don't necessarily get on there and read them all that often myself. She'll be happy to tell me about them. But again, thank you. I appreciate everyone who's been through this journey. I will say that I've read a few comments myself that have been very helpful and just good to hear from others. And for me, just kind of put a smile on my face and just make me feel like there's a lot of, a lot of good people out there who understand what we're going through and are supportive of what we're dealing with. And I appreciate that. I appreciate the reaching out. I appreciate the sending of good wishes and letting us know that you're thinking of us and that you're concerned about how we're doing and how we're dealing with everything. So I do appreciate that. I know for our close family and friends, you guys have been kept at a bit of an arm's length, but you can always text, and we're always happy to hear from you. As Blanca says, the "how are you doing" question isn't our favorite. It's a loaded question because it's just one of those things, just like in everyday life. Somebody comes up to you on the street, "How are you today?" And you're always going to say good, even if you're not. And I guess we just don't want to say that because we're not good. But at the same time, we don't want to explain why we're not good or even can put it into words. It's just one of those things that's a difficult question to address. I've had a few people ask me, "How's Blanca?" And it's like, I don't have an answer for that. If you ask me, I think she's doing great. But that doesn't mean she's doing great. It just means that she's handling things really well. But we do like hearing from people, and I'm looking forward to going out again and spending time with friends and family. We've got to spend a lot of time with family, so I would say I'm more looking forward to actually getting an opportunity going out and spending time with a lot of my friends who I know are thinking about us and want to make sure that we're doing well and want to help us to kind of keep our minds occupied and focusing on the good in life and the things that make us happy and doing the things that we always have enjoyed in the past. So again, thank you everyone out there. Thank you to all those people who are watching. Thank you to our followers and to the friends who are watching this as well. Goodbye.